Go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is Thursday, May 19th. This is a regular council meeting. If you would, please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance. Remain standing. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Jack, will you give the invocation, please?
Father, we thank you for this evening. We thank you for the beautiful weather that you've given us. And we ask that you bless each person that's here tonight, all of our citizens, and that we bless our heroes that are in our armed services and protect us each day. We ask that you be with us tonight as we make these decisions. And all these things we pray. Amen.
I would entertain a motion to consideration of the approval of the agenda.
Mayor,
Yeah.
I'd like to amend the agenda if possible.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we take all of the items, since Mr. Bryan's not here, and all of the items that are under new business are discussion only items, that we table them to the next work session. And that item 13, the public comment period, seems like a repetition of the 10-minute public input, so I suggest a motion that we remove that from the agenda as well.
I'm sorry, what is it you want to remove?
The public comment at the end of the agenda, because we have public input at the beginning.
Well, I think there's a difference, somewhat of a distinct difference between the two, and that is that the input, public input at the beginning, is quite a number of people who like to come in, make comments, and not stay here later at 9 o'clock. And then there are those who would like to observe what the council, the actions that the council takes, and make any comments, or even if we table something, they might want to make a comment on it for our benefit for a future meeting or something. I see the two as somewhat distinctly different.
Well, from what says the charter, I think it's the charter, the code says that anyone who wants to speak on any of the items on the agenda has to have specific approval from council to speak. And if we're just given a blanket public comment period for that speak, I don't know if we should do that.
Okay?
Excuse me.
Yes.
So what we should do then is have those who want to speak to it in a 10-minute public input section. Is that what you're saying? So it's Could run longer than 10 minutes. Let it run.
I think the point is partially that there needs to be an opportunity at the end of the meeting for comments, as opposed to all just at the beginning, because, you know, they will have an opportunity at that point to have heard the discussion and the back and forth comments among the council, and have a little better idea where everybody's coming from, and maybe need to do that. But, sure, decision. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I think due to the amount of information on the agenda tonight, with a lot of key topics, I think we should leave that public comment period, number 13 on the agenda as is. So, let's just leave it as is.
Okay, we have a motion on the table that we remove the public comment period at the end of the meeting. Any other discussion?
Well, it was, and also to take the items under new business and table them to the work session.
I'd like to take these one at a time if we could. If you don't mind, we'd like to take these amendment to the removing the public comment period first, and then we'll come back and do the other.
I had one last comment.
Yes.
I feel we should be open to transparency, and if somebody wants to say something at the end of the council meeting in regards to what we discussed tonight, they should have that opportunity.
Well, what we can do, excuse me, what I will do is before the meeting adjourns, I will ask if anyone wants to speak and at least give them the opportunity while we're here before we adjourn. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
We're keeping the 10-minute public input at the beginning.
Yes, yes.
So the motion was to, I realize I'm late, and I apologize.
To remove the public comment period at the end.
Public comment period at the end because of the fee and duplication. And then to remove the items under new business, ABD. Was that the
The motion was to move the new business, table the new business items to the work session.
under new business?
Yes.
It's a case to the work session.
Well, as you know, we had somewhat of a concurrence that a council member could put anything on there that they wanted, and I guess we can, the council can take it off if they wish, but those are all items that I asked to be on the agenda. And, you know, I thought they were important to this body and maybe to the citizens here. I wouldn't have asked that they be on there. But like I said, we're going to take the first item first, and that is the removal of the public comment period at the end. Okay? Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no?
No.
Okay. All members with the exception of Mr. Churchill are voting in favor of the motion. The next motion is to remove under new business items which I will name. Item A, discuss the wastewater treatment plant fines in the last 24 months. I think that is very important to our discussion, and you know, if we don't want to discuss it up front under this particular item, we're going to discuss it if we talk about water rate increases. Because I think it's important for us to know what kind of fines we're getting with our wastewater treatment plant, and so that we know something needs to be done. And the fact that we hope that if we did something, those fines would cease. Also, I wanted to, item B is a discussion of the Georgia billboard legislation regarding the cutting of trees along the interstate so that billboards could be viewed. I had hoped to ask this body to consider at least asking the governor perhaps not to sign that legislation because it is quite honestly, you know, one of the worst things that I can see is when I go through South Georgia, there's a strip down through there, there's nothing but billboards on the interstate. That's all it's there. You can't even read them all if you're going the speed limit. And the one thing that is so nice about this area up here is the lack of billboards. DOT has plenty of directional and informational signs at various interchanges. So I feel like it's not going to be a good thing for the contractors and billboard owners to whack away all the trees along the state right-of-way there on the interstate. Just my thoughts. The other item was the possible bidding of auditing services. It's that time again that we have a 3-year contract with Malden Jenkins for the audit. And I would hope to be able to discuss that it was time that we should go ahead and begin to look at that. And item D was an item that was has been brought to my attention by a citizen who happens to be here, as a matter of fact, is the discussion of relighting the street lights that we have had out over the past 2.5 years. Half of the street lights have been turned out, a cost-saving measure, and quite honestly, didn't feel like some of them were necessary, but because we had so many of them. But some of them are necessary, and some of the ones that are out may well be in strategic positions that we may want to think in terms. I wanted to ask this council if they would like to consider relighting those that are there. I had asked our city manager to find out how much we had actually saved over those years of those streetlights being out, and whether or not it's really worth it to us or not. Do we turn them back on and move on, or what should we do in that respect? That was what that item was about. But we have a motion. Do we have a motion to remove those items from the agenda? Do we have a second? Now, this is a second motion. We already went through the first one. This is
I have a point of information.
Yes,
Mayor.
yes, ma'am.
Mr. Rush, your previous motion included all items. I understand the mayor said that he was going to separate to it. Did you not state in your previous motion that the items that are included here under new business for discussion would be carried over to our work session, where we go into a lot more detail versus dealing with tonight
Yes,
when there was a number of.
well, part of my reasoning was that since Mr. Bryan's not here because of his daughter's function tonight, I think these are all discussion items that we should have the full council around to discuss them. And I just didn't want to leave Mr. Bryan out of the discussion, and I don't think there's any urgency in any one of them.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
to that one point, he's missed 5 council meetings, so I don't know if we can wait until he finally comes back on that point. The other is, you want to delay this for the work session, is that correct? Okay.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to remove those items 9A through D from the agenda. Those in favor, do we have a second?
The motion was removed from the agenda and carried on to the work session. And, not just removed from the agenda,
Well,
but removed from the agenda and to put them on the agenda for the work session. Is that fine?
Correct.
Okay, all right, whatever it is there. We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Have a second. All right, those in favor of, any other discussion? Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no?
No.
All members with the exception of Ms. Beresford voted no.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to amend the agenda. We have council-induced items, and I think these were 2 classics that would be appropriate for the work session at our next council meeting. Action under 11A and B. So we can have a discussion, and hopefully Mr. Bryant will be there for those discussions. I'd like to make a motion that we table those till next council meeting.
I see item A, action on stormwater water utility credit program, and the action on the creation of reserve fund. Okay, we have a motion to move those to the work session, is that correct?
Just want a clarification.
Yes, ma'am.
I understand what Mr. Beresford is saying here, but if we not have these items on our agenda for the work session,
We did.
for these items that were already discussed, Mr. Ryan was present at that section. Can hear. My
comments were that these items were on the work session agenda for, at our first council meeting this month, and that Mr. Bryan was present at that one, and that we did have a discussion by full council on those two items, so I really don't see a need for those to be removed from the agenda. That's just my comment.
Okay. We have a motion on the table. Do we have a second? Okay, if not, the motion dies for lack of second. All right. We need our guests and visitors tonight, we have a proclamation here that I would like to read and then present to the Canton Garden Club. I have a number of members here. It says, whereas gardeners have a passion for nurturing the beauty and resources of the earth through the planting of seeds, the care of all plants, and the harvesting of the riches of their efforts. And whereas gardeners seek to add beauty, splendor, fragrance, and nutrition to our lives through the growing of herbs, vegetables, foliage, and flowers. And whereas gardeners work to preserve our county's traditional spirit of independence and initiative through innovation and hard work. And whereas gardeners advocate the importance of all creatures, large and small, that share our world and their roles in a balanced and productive ecology. And whereas gardening furnishes a challenging and productive activity for many citizens, for those just learning as well as those having years of experience. And whereas gardening promotes a healthy lifestyle that lasts a lifetime, helps reduce stress from other areas of life, teaches that rewards come from diligent efforts, and whereas gardening enables members of garden clubs across the nation and the world to serve others in the communities in which they reside and work. Now therefore, the mayor of the city of Canton does hereby proclaim that in an effort to acknowledge the importance of gardening and the numerous contributions of gardeners, the week of June 5th to June 11th, 2011 shall be designated as the National Garden Week, 19th day of May 2011. Those of you in the garden club, if you would come up over here. Got everybody? Thanks.
Nice try. We all wrote it.
Ten-minute public input period. We have a number of individuals who would like to speak. Mr. Bonner, Andy Bonner.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Andy Bonner, and I am a senior citizen. I also live in the city of Canton. I'm here to represent the 2,000 plus seniors who live in the city of Canton. Also here tonight to ask you not to remove the subsidy that seniors now receive on their garbage pickup. I feel that the city has other options to increase revenue without doing it on the backs of senior citizens. Seniors are already facing a possible water rate increase of anywhere from 20 to 30% this year. I've even heard estimates will be even higher than that. Seniors have not had an increase in their Social Security for the past 2 years, while the cost of food and medicine has increased. Many seniors, especially the elderly, live on a very tight budget. Most of these seniors do not have the generous pensions nor the 401k plans to fall back on. Many of these seniors depend on their sons and daughters. Now those sons and daughters are facing difficult times. I ask you to not put this increase on the back of an 82-year-old widow lady who needs every penny of her modest Social Security to pay for food and medicine. She lives on a fixed income. I would also like to recommend to the council that they seek a checkoff box on the new Canton water bill similar to the Georgia Power bill, where a customer can add an additional $1, $2, or even $5 to their water bill that would go to a nonprofit fund and to help those in need pay their water and garbage bill. Please give this some thought before you make your final decision on this subject, and I thank you for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bonner. Mr. John Rusk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. First of all, Mayor, thank you for putting comment period on the agenda, and no thank you for removing it, the rest of you. And the reason I thought that was important, and I would have loved to have seen it, is that I am looking at an agenda, and I'm guessing what you're going to do with it. At the end of the meeting, I know what you've done with it. And I might like to comment on it. It's very frustrating many times to walk out of this meeting with things I would like to say and have to wait a week, 2 weeks, 2 weeks to say it to you at the next work session or next city council meeting. I think it's important. I'm sorry you took it off, and maybe you'll reconsider it in the future. The second thing I'd like to have you consider is that some of you are pretty quiet with your votes. Since we are now live streaming, and this is a permanent record of what you do here, I would love to see a record, either a tote board, red, green light, something that indicates the way you voted. Because, yes, Mayor, you try to always say who voted yes, who voted no. Sometimes there's a mix, and it would be very helpful if there was some kind of a tote board or some kind of a permanent record that the people that are going to start watching this live streaming will at least be able to look back and say, he voted for that, he proposed that. Those are things that could be very important in the future. Which leads me to another thing I'd like to do. And then most of you got a notice about a committee that I started, and thanks to Bob Rush. Bob, I really appreciate your bringing this up at the last meeting and suggesting that this committee be formed. And it's something that I wanted to do since last year when there was a failed attempt by this council to raise their pay. Since this is an election year, the likelihood of that being brought back up by you, city council members, is 0. And the likelihood of it getting passed if you appoint a committee to go out and recommend your hand-picked people to go out and come back and say you guys should get a raise, I think the city wouldn't like that too much. And I think your likelihood of getting an acceptable solution to that is poor. I tried to create an independent committee. I did not tell the mayor, I did not tell any council member that I was forming this. I said, Bob, you started it. I was going to wait a while to do this because I had some other things on my plate. But you prompted me to move quickly on this, and I am going to have a meeting beginning, the first initiating meeting will be a week from tonight at 6 o'clock. You're all invited to attend. The purpose is just to discuss, if we're going to look at salaries of the city council members, I think you have to look at more than that. First of all, how did they get here? The voting procedures. I take exception a little bit with the city ward voting procedures because it looks like taxation without representation. You got wards, appointment for candidates, and you got citywide voting. There's something that's wrong with that, my opinion, but I want to see what this committee comes up with. You also got to look at the elected officials' compensation. If you just say, you guys need a pay raise, I'd like to see what it really costs us to run the city council, because there are other expenses, there's pension rights that we're creating here, and if we only look at the salary, you make a mistake of not looking at the whole picture. I want to look at the whole picture. My purpose here is really to benefit the city of Canton. I have a personal opinion that the city council members are woefully underpaid. When that was not passed a year ago, I thought the numbers looked pretty good to me. And I know this is hard to do when you're got budget deficits, but the bottom line is this: you guys are underpaid. Now, what I would like to see in this come out of my committee is we want to pay you more. We are going to expect more from you. I'd like to see the quality of the candidates or their attention to detail, being at meetings and so forth. And I know there's excuses, but maybe 5, there's not excuses to miss 5 meetings. Not to pick on one council member, but that happens to be the fact. So the bottom line is that we're going to pay you more, we're going to expect more. What's the cost benefits of this system and how's it going to impact us? This is open to everybody regardless of whether or not you're voting age or not. If you're a young man like yourself, can't vote, come to the meeting and we'd appreciate your input. So there might be 1 or 100 people here next week, but I'll be here and I hope you will too, and I would welcome your input. This is a very positive thing, I hope, for the city of Canton, and only will be if you participate and help me out. The last thing I'd like to mention is this: there's a housekeeping method, at least issue about pay. I think you have to be real careful, having studied the city of Canton charter quite carefully over the last 6 months, that if you turn around and consider this a housekeeping method, it could be a legal issue that you really raised your pay. And in that case, there's some issues as to when that becomes effective. So you want to go retroactive, $840 a year, and then not get paid for it until after the next election. So you could really, if you do it wrong, you could really mess things up. If you would beg my opportunity here, at least to examine this issue, come back with some recommendations, and perhaps you can take it to the right number and not $2,100 a year. The sleeping dog is lying. Maybe it needs to lie at least until, it doesn't affect you until January. So what's the hurry to change that? The pay doesn't come, we paid once a year in January, so let it sit for a couple of months. You can bring it up again. It doesn't need to come out. If you give me a chance to even examine this, it might be beneficial to you and the city council. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Steve Nelson?
Mayor, esteemed members of the council, just take a moment. I'm here to remind you, and I'll probably remind you again, that you have been duly appointed to be the judges for the chili cook-off, the third chili cook-off in Canton on June 18th. Make sure it's in your calendar. Don't make me have to come get you.
John Colorito? Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, you did. Okay, concerned city of Canton resident, and this is my first time being at a council meeting. And right from the get-go, I was just kind of disappointed on dropping the public comment at the end of the council meeting. So I feel like Mr. Rust so eloquently told everybody that we need to comment after what you do during the meeting. A little nervous right now. And also dropping the new business and putting that towards the work session. I don't know if the work sessions are public knowledge or they are. Okay. So under new business, the one thing that is very important, like the mayor did discuss, is the fines for a wastewater treatment plant that have been accumulating over the past 24 months. It even goes back further than that. So if concerned citizens want to visit the Georgia EPD website, it's gaepd.org. They can look up the city of Canton, and you have a whole list of fines handed down by the EPD. Over the past 3 years, going even back further than that, I only went back to the past 3 years, there's over $30,000 worth of fines. That's not including consent order, which the city is now under. I'm not sure what the consent order is, when is that due by, what the fines are for that consent order. But you do have now a contractor that's been operating City of Canton water and wastewater business for quite a few years now. And I feel, as a taxpayer, City of Canton, that they should be held liable for those fines. And they should be liable for how much debt we are in. And the state we are in as far as our water and wastewater business. Now, you have on the agenda tonight a financial review and economic analysis of alternative ownership and scenarios by this financial consultant. Now, this financial consultant is just numbers financial advisors. They just concerned with numbers. Have you gone out to a certified persons or companies that are certified in wastewater and water businesses to get their input on what needs to be done? I see the proposed rates of water rates going up 16% proposed, but sewer rates going up 42%. Now, I know that's not even close to near what local utility companies charge. It's nowhere, it's way over what they charge. Okay, has the increase in water and sewer rates been calculated with the population growth? Population growth in City of Canton, have you noticed with the last census, it has increased considerably. And what you have to realize is you have to consider what your, how you are going to provide water and sewer to the new population. And I also like to know whatever became to looking into reviewing the contract with this utility company that does our water, wastewater. What have they been looked into as far as why are they being held liable for all these fines, and what is their reasoning on why we have to raise rates so much, and why is the wastewater plant been out of compliance? Now that wastewater plant was redesigned approximately 6 years ago, and at that time was have the engineers been held liable for not providing the upgrades to that plant in accordance with the EPD permit limits, which I don't think they have been. And just to close out, just to take a quote from our city manager: we need to get out of the water business, because we're not running a business where we owe so much money, and it's not viable for the city can't do that. I mean, you should hand it over to someone that knows how to run that water and sewer business. And that's all I wanted to say. I want to thank you.
Thank you very much. Brandon Roberts.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. In response to a previously published letter in the media concerning the painting of stripes in Heritage Park for bicycles, I would like to offer my opinion. Although not many people ride bikes in this particular park, those who do are going way too fast. This could cause someone to get severely injured. In addition to this was to happen, the city of Canton could end up in a lawsuit. That person would have the right to sue the city because it is indeed a city park. From being a regular attendee of these meetings, I know that the city is in no position financially to handle a lawsuit. As stated before, the city unfortunately inherited a financial nightmare from the previous administration. Think it would be a good thing to paint stripes on the sidewalks at Heritage Park to prevent a citizen from getting sideswiped or seriously injured. This is, in my opinion, common sense on the council's part. This problem can easily be prevented. I would hope that you would do the right thing and protect those who walk in the parks by placing visible notice to bicyclers to slow down and be mindful of those around you. And I'd also like to add, this is not a beautification issue at the park, it's a safety matter for the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Glenn Cummins.
Mr. Mayor, council members, concerned citizens, as you know, usually when I get up here, everybody sort of grabs hold of their chair and wonders what I'm going on the attack. But anyway, tonight you have an agenda item, the establishment of reserve accounts. Before you discuss this topic, I thought you should hear an informed perspective about reserve accounts. The purpose of a reserve account is to have funds set aside for either a known purpose or as a fund for some event that might arise that was totally unforeseen. In the case of a known event, that event could be for a requirement that's imminent, i.e. in the current fiscal year, or for a requirement that could be years out. For example, the replacement of the roof on a building that's owned by the city might be 10 years away, but we should be building a reserve for that event so that when it is required, we do not have to make a drastic reactive decision. The purpose of establishing reserve accounts is to prevent emergency reactive decisions when a crisis arises, which then causes an unexpected tax increase and or fee increases and or expensive borrowing. Unexpected obligations placed on our citizens are always greater than they would have been had the council been proactive rather than reactive. The funding of reserves is methodical, either by setting aside of the entire amount and then using it for a designated purpose when it arises, or a setting aside of periodic amounts until the reserve reaches the determined amount. No matter whether the reserve is for a designated purpose event or for the unforeseen, the establishment of such a reserve is done normally only at 2 times during the year. And May 19th is not one of them. First, at the time of budgeting, for the next year, there should be extensive thought processes undertaken as to the events that will occur in the future and the determination of sufficient reserves to handle the unforeseen. The budgeting process would then establish specific fund amounts to be set aside during the year as revenues flow in. The second time that you establish reserves is after the fiscal year completes and the financial status for the year is known. If there is a budget surplus, funds can be taken from this surplus and placed in the reserve accounts. When I say accounts, because you could have multiple reserve accounts. It is also important to emphasize that designated reserve accounts should be used only for their designated purpose. The having of reserve accounts smooths out increases in taxes and or fees, so citizens are not faced with extraordinary high increases at one time. In addition, I'd like to go on to the thing called the unassigned balance. My definition of the unassigned balance and this council's definition of the unassigned balance are not the same, and I'd be glad to discuss at any time what an unassigned balance should be, in my opinion, with anybody. Tonight, you're also going to make, and I call a reactive decision, relative to water and sewer rates. This, in my opinion, should have been a proactive decision made many months ago. It is not as if you did not know the large payment due in September when the council made the budget last year. I can only hope that you make the right decision tonight and that you have considered all the alternatives. I have not heard the concept of using a temporary surcharge debated during any of the meetings. This concept is sometimes used to address needed revenue in the short term, while the entire issue and other options are debated. You're also going to address garbage collection fees. I believe that garbage collection fee should be relative to the amount of garbage collected. Now, I know we're not going to go around and weigh everything, but there could be an investigation and an alternative to looking at to charging based on what you use. We do that in many other things. When you pay your tax on gasoline, you pay based on the mileage or the amount of miles that you drive. A residence, for example, with 12 occupants generates a lot more garbage than a residence with 1 or 2 occupants. If both residents pay the exact fee, same fee, then the smaller residence, in essence,